What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today I want to ask you a question, but first, I hope your day's been going well. I mean, it's been a pretty good day over here. It's nice and cold, slept with the windows open, and didn't have to turn the AC on. It's still nice and cold here in Arizona. It's probably only gonna last for like a day or two. Do you shoot with a wide-angle lens? What is your favorite wide-angle lens? For me, mine's definitely the Fujifilm 8 to 16mm f2.8 lens. Alright, so let's start with some pros about this amazing lens. So it is a constant f2.8 from 8mm all the way down to 16mm. So with that being said, if you need to zoom in while you're filming or if you are just shooting at different focal lengths with this lens, you can keep it at f2.8 if you wish to. Now being at 8mm and 2.8, that does allow a decent amount of light to come in, especially if you're going to do some astrophotography. Or let's just say if you're shooting with a subject that's relatively close to the actual front element of the lens, if you have it at 2.8, you can actually get a nice blur on that subject or get some really good depth of field. This lens does have a linear focus motor in there for the autofocus system, so it is nice and quiet. You do not hear anything when you are focusing, especially in video. Now, I haven't really used it too much for video, but I can only assume that you would not hear anything, or if you did, it'd be very, very small and minute of a noise. And one thing I really like to have in all the lenses that I choose are weather resistant or weather sealing. So this lens is no slouch when it comes down to weather resistance. This thing is a tank. It has extensive weather resistant built into it. So any kind of moisture, dust, you have no problem with this lens. And I would say sure hope so for the price tag that it's at. You can even use this lens and have like absolute confidence all the way down to 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Now in Celsius, I'm not sure what that is, but I'll do the math and put it up there. With this being one of Fujifilm's more pro-line lenses, you can expect sharpness from edge to center. So you definitely are gonna get the sharpest images out of this lens compared to some of the other wide-angle lenses from Fujifilm. And if you had to ask me, I would even say that this is probably one of the sharpest wide-angle lenses that I've ever used in any camera brand. Now this lens isn't all good. There is going to be some bad because there is no perfect lens out there. Some of the cons to this lens is, for one, the price tag. So when it's not on sale, and I got this one, it was on sale because that's how I justified the price tag, it comes in a whopping $2,000 USD. Now, I got it at $1,600 USD, so it's still pricey, but that $400 price tag that I got off was definitely worth it. I'm just not the biggest fan of on this lens is going to be this amazingly giant bulbous lens hood. Now, overall, this is not a huge deal just because obviously it is what it is. It allows to have a really sharp element in there, but I do use filters for my photography, and that was one of the drawbacks of getting this lens is that you then have to buy a drop-in filter set, which they're not cheap. I haven't done one yet, or haven't bought one yet, just because I'm not too sure if I want to, because I already have a drop-in filter set for my 16 to 55mm lens. And I use that a lot. I haven't really found myself wanting to use a filter with this lens as of right now, but that could change in the future. I don't know. It is a drawback. I mean, to some people that would be a big deal breaker, and I've talked to people that it is a big deal breaker. For me, I've been on the fence about it. I mean, it was not a big enough deal breaker for me to not purchase the lens, obviously, because I have it in my hand. But overall, though, it is nice to have a lens that has a screw-on filter thread to where you can just buy screw-on circular filters, or I wouldn't have to upgrade to a bigger filter system, either from like Haida or Nissi. I mean, that's the filter company I use right now, is Nissi for my landscape photography. Now, one thing I really wish that Fuji would have done with this lens for that filter situation was to add like a drop-in filter set back there. That would have been really, really convenient, just purely because the fact is then you wouldn't have to buy that big adapter that goes on in front of it. You would still have to buy new filters for it, so that doesn't get around the price tag, but it does allow you to at least not have to have something big and bulky on the front of the element. Like those drop-in filter 100 by 100 filter sets. One really cool thing about Fuji, and one of the reasons why I switched over to Fuji, was because of the smaller and lighter ecosystem that they have. Now, the lens I had before this as a wide angle was the 10-24 f4 lens, which was a significantly smaller lens and also to a significantly lighter lens. So this does come in at a whopping weight of 805 grams. It is definitely not the lightest lens. I've had to use heavier lenses with Fujifilm, so it's definitely not the heaviest. like the 100 to 400 that I used for a very long time. That was definitely the heaviest lens I've ever used on a Fujifilm camera. And not that it's like overly heavy, it's not like unbalanced with the X-T4 or the X-T3, but I would say if you're using like an X-T30 or an X-T20 or even like the X Pro series, it would be a little bit unbalanced. So I would definitely suggest, if you are going to be using this lens, have it with a X-T3, X-T4, or like an X-T1 or X-T2 system. I think if you're looking for one of the pro Fujifilm wide-angle lenses, this is definitely gonna be the best one for that. Now the 10 to 24 weather-resistant lens that just got announced, I would definitely like to try that out. I heard that the optics are the same, so there's not much of a difference there, but I would definitely like to try and see how weather resistant it really is, to see if it really can hold up to something like this. So, Fujifilm, if you are watching, send your boy a copy. Let me test it out. Let me do a video for you. Why not, right? Now, one thing I will say, I did ask if you guys shot wide. So shooting wide is not always gonna be the end all be all. It's definitely not the thing that you wanna do the most, because there are situations where you're gonna be shooting wide and you're getting the grand vastness of everything, but then the subject that you're trying to focus on, that you want your subject to look at, is really, really small in that frame now, and that's because you're shooting too wide. So the funny thing is, as a landscape photographer primarily, I don't actually use this lens all that much. There's very situational circumstances that I use this in. So on my trip to Oregon recently, I think I used this once. And not because I don't love the lens, because I do love the lens, but everything that I was shooting primarily called for a mid-range zoom lens. So I used my 16 to 55 2.8 lens the most on that whole entire trip, including filming, but then also including photos. Now, one really cool thing about having something as a 12 to 24 equivalent full frame in this lens is that you can really over-exaggerate like certain types of like scene. So I have one photo where I have some cactus in the foreground, and then I have the superstitious mountains in the background, and I get this lens extremely close to that actual cactus, and then I basically pointed the camera down with the lens, and then I over exaggerated the cactus in the foreground, and then I focus stacked, and then I also then waited for the sunset, and then basically waiting for some stars to come out behind and above these superstitious mountains, and then I basically composited that shot. So there are really, really good like circumstances that where shooting wide with having something like that is gonna come in handy, because I love that shot. It's one of my favorites, and this lens killed that type of photo. Now, if the pros definitely outweigh the cons for this lens for you, then it is one hell of a lens to have in your arsenal. It's definitely worth the price tag, in my opinion. Now, if you can't afford it, then there are other options like the 10 to 24. I have amazing photos with that lens, and not that it's a bad lens, because it is no slouch at all. It's just I wanted something with a little bit sharper optics, and then I also wanted something with weather resistance, and I really wanted something with an f2.8 aperture. That the 10 to 24 weather resistant f4 is now here and available. Not to say that I would sell this lens, because I would never sell it, because I do love it that much. I would just love to test it out to see, optically speaking, if it is something that I could have in my kit maybe for a better vlogging lens. Like this 16 to 55 lens is perfect for sitting down in stationary shots and, you know, doing like stuff on a gimbal. But I would say for like arm's length away vlogging, I love the separation I get from the background, but when it comes down to how close it is, I would like to have something a little bit wider to bring in the audience a bit better. Alright guys, and with all that being said, that's gonna be it for this video. I wanted something short and quick. I wanted to give kind of a bit of a, not like a review, but just kind of giving you the pros and cons, in my opinion, for this lens. Now, if this was something that you enjoyed and you like the pros and cons list of this lens, and maybe you would want one of the 16 to 55 as well, I would have to keep it on the camera, obviously, because I need it to film, but I can still do a pros and cons list on that one too, for what I've experienced. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you are a subscriber or a new subscriber, thank you for being here and watching this video. If you want to, and I would really appreciate it, please leave a like on this video. It actually really does help. And if you want, share it to your friends, share it to anyone that's maybe interested in buying this beast of a lens. Now, other than that, peace out, guys. Catch you later. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.